Hello, my name's Lee Foster Wilson and I'm an artist and illustrator from Cornwall in the UK. Welcome to part 2 of how I started my business and became an illustrator. So in part 1, I talked about my creative education and how I started my business, Bombay Forest, and all the incarnations it's taken on over the last 16 and a half years, which I can't believe it's been that long really. I also talk about how after I had my babies, I started to get a desire to make art for myself again and started drawing with Sharpie pens. That was a real turning point for me in many ways, and this next section of this winding tale is all about what happened next. I thought I'd tell you this next part while I draw the next bird in my Garden Birds series. I hope you like it. So there I was, still busy with Bombay Forest and fitting in 20 minutes each day to do my 100-day project with my Sharpies, and also juggling life as a mum with 2 very young children. At that time, my husband and I were splitting the days in 2, working for half a day and looking after the children the other half, which we still do in the school holidays. It was hard work with lots of evenings being worked to catch up on everything that needed doing, but it did work for us. Anyway, when my son was still a baby, I heard from an art director at a company called Compendium. It was so out of the blue, so quite a surprise, but I was really chuffed to hear from her. Compendium were working on a range of small journals, and she'd seen my work on Pinterest, of all places, and wanted to pitch my style at the next design meeting. Of course I said yes, and thankfully we got the go-ahead, and that is how I got my first proper paid illustration job with a contract and everything. I really liked working on that journal and being art directed. I was given a mood board and several quotes that I had to illustrate along with some end paper patterns to work on. It was so much fun, and the best bit was that instead of having to work out how to get the books printed and pack them all up and send them to customers as I would have had to do if this was a product for Bombay Forest, I sent the digital files and was just paid, and very nicely as well. It wasn't long after completing that job that I found myself Googling how to get illustration commissions, and I came across the courses called Make Art That Sells run by the American illustration agent Lila Rogers. The programme looked really good to me, with loads of great testimonials, and not to mention she represented several artists whose work I already really loved. And they were running self-directed courses and live courses, but being limited on time, I decided to sign up to one of the self-directed courses and immediately dove into all of the information. There was just so much of it. And I found out that there was just loads of different markets that I could potentially make work for and completely immerse myself. And I realised that if I wanted to do this, I had a lot to learn. By becoming obsessed with learning from the Make Art That Sells courses, I also soon found out about their Global Talent Search, which is a contest run by Lilith so she can find her next artist that she wants to represent. And I was feeling confident because I'd done one whole illustration job by that point, so I was effectively a working illustrator, right? But with my confidence buoyed by that, I decided to enter. And I don't know what I was thinking really. I even submitted my piece for round 1 with one vital part missing. But thankfully they let me resubmit, and to my great surprise, after that blunder, I somehow managed to make it to the final 50 out of over 800 entries. And of course I didn't make it any further in the competition, but this didn't really matter because I recognised that by that point that I was a complete novice in this world, and my confidence bounced right back again when the very same month I was contacted by an editor at Quarto Publishing, which was again just completely out of the blue to me. The editor had seen my 100-day project on Instagram where I was using Sharpies to make a drawing a day with random colours, and said that she was looking for an artist to author a book about making art with marker pens. She said that she loved my work and wanted to pitch it to the team at Quarto. Again, of course, I said yes. Before I knew it, we had contracts signed, and by mid-autumn I was working on the first batch of work for a new book, my new book, which made for a really busy time. Weirdly though, despite not having much time to work, I was feeling really creative and was being very productive in the time that I did have. I was working on the book, I was running Bombay Forest and creating new products, as well as taking my self-directed maths course. Perhaps there's something about not really having much time to waste that just condenses the work ethic. I was flat out, but that didn't really matter because at the other end of the day from work, I was being a mum, gathering up my babies for blustery playtimes on the beach or rolling around on the living room floor with the Brio train set. And despite the lack of sleep, I look back on this time really fondly. It was busy, but it was also fun and cute. So I worked on the book in stages for most of the winter, having to wing it and learn on the job when it came to the sections on paint markers and basically anything that wasn't a Sharpie, really. It was a steep learning curve, but I was pleased with the content and I was discovering new materials and ways of working that were making my work loads better in the process. And in early 2017, I also signed up for the Make Art That Sells bootcamp course because I knew by now that I wanted to pursue being an illustrator, but was also really starting to recognise that my portfolio was seriously lacking. And the bootcamp course was great for that because it involves lots of bite-sized projects that together accumulate some really nice portfolio pieces. My book, came out in May that year, and by now I was officially an author. And by that time I'd also taken a Make Art That Sells course in home decor and was also signed up for the Kids Book Live class too. I was a bit hooked on these classes, as you can probably tell, and the online community that came with them was great as well because it made me feel less isolated and I was keen to learn, and there was lots to learn from my course peers too. My portfolio was growing by this point, and by doing the book and discovering all the other types of marker pen that was out there that I could make work with, my work was developing really rapidly as well. The start of 2018 was much the same, and I took the bootcamp course again, and I also had some lovely commissions from a couple of magazines called Molly Makes and In the Moment. And I think they picked up my star because I'd advertised Bombay Forest with them previously. They're part of the same publishing house, and it was really nice to be in their fold for a while doing these commissions. And I even got to do the Christmas cover for In the Moment, which was a real honour, really. I think getting my foot in the door via Bombay Forest and then keeping up with them on social media really helped me there. As the year progressed, I also signed up to write another book with the same editor and publisher, which was to be called The Grown-Up's Guide to Making Art with Kids. It was another book that I loved working on, especially as I could get my children to help with aspects of it by now. They were just about old enough. But really honestly, the idea for the book wasn't mine, and by the end of it I decided that I really didn't want to do another how-to book. They're lovely projects to work on, but at the time I was doing the Grown-Up's Guide, I was also really invested in portfolio building, and I felt that doing my best work for the book was also taking me away from my real goals. I took more Make Art That Sells courses in 2018, and in the summer they also ran another global talent search. I was feeling confident after a couple of good reviews in the live classes, and because of all the other classes I'd taken, I had a stronger portfolio this time and a better knowledge of everything. So I entered again and I got through to the final 50 again, but again I didn't make it any further. I'll admit that this time I was really quite disappointed, but thankfully it didn't last too long, as another quite well-known art agent got in touch at that time to give me her commiserations, and she told me that she really liked my work and would I be up for a chat about potential representation. Of course I jumped at the chance and we had our chat, and I sent her some work and she asked to see more, so I sent her some more, and over the next couple of months I shared what I was working on, but to me things just weren't quite sitting right. She told me that she needed to see that I could do at least 3 to 5 new pieces every week, which I just couldn't do alongside running Bombay Forest and writing the book and trying to be a good mum and sleeping at some points along the way. And by the autumn, I felt like it really wasn't going anywhere, and maybe perhaps she wasn't the agent for me. At the same time, I started to feel like this amazing creative river I'd been sailing for the last couple of years was starting to dry up. And I think my creativity was just caving to the pressure being put on me. I felt like that all that energy had just disappeared and my inner creative child just curled up and hid. And I found that gradually ideas were coming less easily and eventually not at all. And I just felt like everything that I was making was no good, and I didn't even like my own work anymore. And I slid into possibly the worst creative block I've ever had. I decided that I needed to email the agent and tell her what was going on, and that I didn't feel like now was the right time for me to take this step in my career. And she was so nice about it and understanding and encouraging, and she even gave me tips to help me find my way again. And even though I knew that perhaps we weren't a great fit, I just couldn't help feeling disappointed, and that somehow I'd failed, and that maybe I just wasn't cut out to be an illustrator. So I busied myself with working on the Grown-Ups Guide and Bombay Forest for the rest of the winter, and then in early 2019, a little glimmer of hope came my way. Over the previous year or so, a lovely lady called Jahan had been liking and commenting on my Instagram posts, and I'd noticed that the previous year she'd started an illustration agency based in my old art college city of Brighton. Well, anyway, she contacted me and she said she'd really like to have a chat about possible representation. And even though her agency was young, she had some artists that I really admired on her books already. And well, you can imagine at that time, and after the disappointment of the previous year, I was absolutely over the moon. The problem was that I was still in the awful block. I was also still handing in the rest of the Grown-Ups Guide. And along with my home life, which was really busy at that time because we were in the middle of building our house and the children were still so small, I just didn't have the headspace to think properly about it. But thankfully, she was prepared to wait for me to get myself in a better position. And a couple of months later, we reconvened and met via Zoom. She was lovely, really understanding about my commitments with Bombay Forest and having a young family, and there was no expectation of how much work I would have to turn in, and I had such a good feeling about it that we decided to go for it. We signed the contract in the summer, and I was announced as her newest artist in September 2019. I've worked on some really exciting and wonderful things with her since then, and have my art licensed to products all over the world. Having an agent isn't for everyone, but for someone like me who kind of relied on work coming my way and not really knowing how to be proactive about getting it, I'm talking about sending one email shot out and then being really irregular with following up here. I did try, but because of that, Jahan has been absolutely invaluable to my career. It's funny looking back because even though I'd illustrated for magazines and created a journal and written 2 books and sold all sorts of pieces with my art all over them via Bombay Forest, I still didn't have the confidence to call myself an illustrator until I'd signed with Jahan. And even then, it wasn't until I'd had my first few licenses and commissions from her under my belt that I felt that confidence to say, yes, I'm an illustrator. However, having said that, I still feel like I'm finding my niche within the illustration and art licensing world, and maybe that's just an ongoing thing. There's just so many options and things that I love to try with my work. So this is where I am now, and funnily enough, if you've seen my previous videos, you'll know that I'm at the stage where I have a yearning to make art for myself again. Even though I'm in that position already, really, but I have a yearning to move my work into a more abstract space, as well as drawing all the things that I love to draw for my illustrations. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to balance Bombay Forest and illustration and shoehorning a freer creative practice in whenever I can. It's easier these days, of course, because my children are 7 and nearly 10 now, so they're at school, so I have that extra time and a little bit more headspace. Not much, but a little bit more. I guess my takeaway from this is that if you want to be an illustrator, be prepared to learn and constantly build out your portfolio and try new things. And it's not just about the drawing either. There are lots of technical things that will stand you in good stead. Perhaps I'll do another video highlighting the skills that I found that I've needed throughout my career. Keep an eye out for that one. Also, I guess the main thing is to make connections wherever you can, get yourself known by potential clients, and if you want one, agents, by liking and commenting on their social media posts. You kind of just have to wheedle your way in. But there are other and likely better ways of getting clients, obviously. But I don't think I'm the person to ask about that because, as you've heard, my experience outside of having an agent has just been a lot of word of mouth and luck and chance. You also have to be prepared to diversify your income a little. Bombay Forest is still my bread and butter, and I don't really know of any other illustrators that haven't diversified at some level, either by having a shop, public speaking, teaching, running a Patreon, or some other sort of income alongside taking commissions and licensing. A creative career is a multifaceted thing, and I guess it's just a case of finding which bits you're good at and running with those and being prepared to pivot too. That's also really important. Anyway, I hope that was in some way useful. As you've heard, my journey to this point has been somewhat winding and it's definitely not at an end place. I imagine it will still change a lot as time goes on. But for now, I'm proud to be an artist and illustrator and business owner and bookkeeper, order packer, head buyer, photographer, image editor, stock manager, copywriter. So there we go. If you enjoyed this and have yet to see part 1 for the first part of my creative journey, please do go and find it on my channel. And while you're there, subscribe and like and all the other things. See you soon.